Okay, just to note that this workshop is being recorded and they'll be made available on Council's website. So apologies, we have Councillor Barnett and Councillor Harris will be a bit late. There's no apologies, everyone's here. Okay, before we start, there's a couple of questions we just want to check. Are elected members available on the 13th of January to attend a workshop about Digital Village? No? So can we just have a show of hand who will be available?
What actual date? What day is that?
13th is on a Tuesday.
Saturday?
Sorry, January. No, it's a Tuesday, which is a workshop day.
Yep.
So we'll have how many, sorry? We can check.
So is that the workshop time?
It's a workshop, 2, 4, 5.
Yep.
I'll be on leave.
You'll be on leave. So 5 next, will we having that workshop item? Yep. So there will be a workshop item on Digital Village on the 13th of January. The next quick question is about, have you all been receiving an appointment made from CEO's office about our workshop and council meeting dates? We just want to make sure that you have? Great.
Randomly, not today.
Yep, great. We just want
A calendar invite?
Yes, they're the calendar invites I'm talking about. Yeah. It did come out today?
I only got for the one that you sent out today.
Yep, great. Great. It's quite a series of them. We just want to make sure that the migration has...
Doesn't look like all of the
Not all of it?
I only got today's today.
Today, yeah, the calendar.
It's only been sent today.
No, they're saying they only received today's workshop.
Oh, today's workshop
Correct.
today.
Yep.
I received one for the 27th of January. And that's what I've received.
Hey,
We need to resend.
we need to
I
read
got 8 or 9 for this year and next year.
That was the plan.
from Councilwoman. Okay, we will need to resend that then.
Probably a few missing in action by the sound of it.
Okay, we'll just check the notes from the previous meeting. Just to remind election members, what we talked about the records management policy, we talked about terrific prospects, and we talked about the council's prayer. So the idea with the council's prayer is there will be a workshop scheduled with the corporate services champion, likely to be on the 17th of February, and I'll send an email out to all elected members other than the champions to invite elected members to attend for that part of that discussion.
Just on terrific prospect, we were going to get those updated figures as everything comes through.
Yes, Nathan is not here. I will follow that up. Follow up.
When we did the switch over, I had a couple of days where no emails came through whatsoever.
That's right.
So they have been sent. We just...
I will just check. Yeah, but it should still reach you because it will still should have a download and reach you. I'll follow up with Carolyn whether the updated figures have been sent.
I don't know whether anybody else had the same thing, but in my settings I had to actually change my settings so it included every email that I'd ever had. Otherwise it only drags them like from a week or 2 weeks. But you probably already had your settings set that way anyway.
Yeah, George would have. If you have been receiving emails though, recent emails. Okay, I'll just check with Carolyn whether she has sent the updated document. All right, so we'll go straight to our first workshop item. This workshop item is about Prospect Farmers Market. So the outcome of this particular workshop, have we moved the agenda up?
Greg and Anders.
Okay. Okay, we'll talk about Narrow Street. So the outcome of this particular agenda is to seek elected members' endorsement on key elements of the draft policy. So I hand over to Greg.
Yes, look, it's quite an emotive issue, Narrow Streets, and we worked on it with our champions last night, as recently as last night. I urge elected members to have a listen at the presentation that's going to be put forward to you, and then allow for general discussion and questions straight after that. Anders, our traffic and environmental engineer, will be presenting tonight, so I'll hand it over to him to present the presentation.
Grab the...
Oh, sorry.
All right. So for those new elected members, basically a narrow street is classified as any street that's less than 7 metres in width, and the issues that narrow streets present because of that is if you have two cars parked adjacent to each other, it's difficult for emergency service vehicles, large trucks, garbage trucks and tickets to traverse the street, as well as just general automobiles. So we're basically wanting to come up with a procedure through our policy that is a standardised way that we can address the issues of narrow streets. So really we're just looking for an, endorsement for this policy, and the biggest component of this policy is the procedure that we have for actually dealing with them. So I'm just going to run you through what that procedure is now.
So just before Andrews does that, tonight is really just to present it to you as a draft form, to talk about it, but it will be brought to council proper for you to actually vigorously look at and vote on.
So the first thing, so basically we won't address any issues unless we receive a complaint in writing from residents. The written complaint needs to include, but it's not limited to, either a resident petition, a council complaint form, direct correspondence from the resident, or an elected member written request. The written complaint needs to include the nature of the issue, so whether it's a minor isolated incident or it's an ongoing chronic issue due to a business or a local community centre in the area. They need to include the peak time, the day it's occurring, and the location. And if that information isn't included, we'll contact the complainant to discern those specifics. Upon receipt of the complaint, of a written complaint, we can then go out and do a flyer drop to all the affected residents in that street, informing them of what the rules are around narrow parking, which is that you need to leave a 3-metre space between adjacent parked cars. We'll also flyer drop all parked cars in that street, attaching education flyers underneath the windscreen. Once that's been completed, following the initial letterbox drop, the community safety officers will then monitor the area at 2-month intervals over a 6-month period following the letter drop during those peak times and the supposed peak day to really assess to see if that letter drop, that education piece, has had any impact. And during that, they're also going to be placing the flyers on the vehicles again to keep that education piece going during that period. If it's observed by our officers that the education campaign has been unsuccessful, we'll then enact a process of community consultation. Now, the community consultation will take the form of a survey letter delivered to all the residents in the affected street. The survey will ask for resident feedback, whether they're for or against the implementation of staggered parking restrictions using yellow lines along the street. We'll present them with a layout of where those parking restrictions will occur. It should be noted this is the only infrastructure option we're going to consider for dealing with narrow streets, and that just comes from experience. Doing yellow line marking down one side of the street just creates, restricting yellow line marking on one side of the street just creates a more dangerous environment. It creates almost a gun barrel effect where people will speed down one side. By having staggered parking restrictions, you also address traffic flow issues, and that actually slows vehicles down and reduces on-street speeds. So with the consultation, we came up with some criteria for assessing the consultation piece. So in order for us to make a decision about whether we're going to do anything in that street, we need to receive at least 70% correspondence back from the residents we've consulted with. From that 70%, we then need above 50% of those respondents to be in favour of implementing parking restrictions before we will consider their implementation. If the residents are in favour and we consider that the restrictions are appropriate, we'll then undertake a letter drop to all the residents saying, we've received overwhelming support for this, basically show them the statistics. We'll then arrange for a line marking contractor to undertake the work. If the residents aren't in favour, they'll be notified again by a letterbox drop stating the reasons that there was insufficient support. Following that, we then won't be doing anything in that street for another 12 months. After a 12-month period, we will then, if we have received ongoing complaints, we will then consider doing the same process again. And lastly, if we don't receive that adequate 70% response from residents, we'll inform the residents, let them know that there wasn't sufficient interest, and again, we'll wait another 12 months before we look at ramping up the procedure again or considering anything for that street. And just with the consultation piece, it should be noted that we reserve the right to make our own determination regarding the implementation of the staggered parking. If we consider it to be a high risk, then we will do something. If we consider it to be a very minor isolated incident with only a few emotive people, we may look at doing something different again. So that's basically the procedure that we're looking at, and that forms the bulk of our policy. Just some things to be mindful of with the current costs. So the average consultation cost per street, which includes the preparation of a report, a layout, and undertaking the actual consultation process, is about $1,200 per street. Our intended infrastructure is just to do yellow line marking, which costs about $1.20 per metre. So we're looking at about $1,000 for an average street. Sometimes it can be required, in addition to the line marking, signage may be required, though generally that's not the case. If we were to look at doing signage as well, that's going to be $50 per sign, and you're going to have a whole street full of signs, which generally isn't, the intended outcome. But that will then add an extra $4,000 probably to the street. So something to consider is that we have within Prospect 96 streets which fall within a narrow streets framework. But of those 96, we've only actually ever received about 13 written complaints regarding narrow street issues. So that gives you an idea of kind of what we're looking at. But yeah, if we were to address that issue in all 96 streets, we'd be looking at a couple of $100,000. But that's not something that we see as being necessary due to minor nature. So I guess our recommendation at the moment, if you endorse our policy, would be to address the current problem streets initially, which we have in like an itemised list, those 13 streets. Because it's going to be quite onerous on our community safety officers in terms of going out and monitoring post the initial letter drop, we're wanting to split up the 13 streets over 3 years, so addressing 4 streets per year. And then looking at the program at the end of those 3 years to see how successfully we've addressed those issues in those 13 problem streets. And so as a part of that, we would look at putting up a budget bid of around $10,000 per year over 3 years to address that, which is basically a $2,000 cost per street with approximately 4 streets addressed per year. Now, with that, the $10,000 may not actually be entirely spent because it's going to come down to what the resident feedback is regarding the consultation. But I guess that budget allocation can be discussed during the budget bid process. So.
And just on the recommendation, it'll, I guess, follow suit the LAPM process where we do consult, we do get the data, and then the following year we implement with some hard infrastructure. That's the process we're suggesting here. But like Anders has told you, we'll do this through the budget deliberation process, and we'll absolutely want you to endorse that and at what level we intervene and how many streets we do per year. But the key points are, I guess, our policy that we do need to address narrow street issues, and then are you comfortable, and we can go back through the slides, with our procedure as far as the education piece, for 6 months, and then if we do get 70% response with over 50% saying there is a problem, we'll implement some staggered parking. Otherwise, we'll let it go for 12 months until we get a complaint again. All right, so look, on that point, I'm happy to open it up for just general discussion. Go around or take specific questions.
I guess the key item is, are you comfortable with I guess in the policy, included in the policy, is that it will only be addressed unless there's a written complaint. There's a written complaint, and the only infrastructure certification is through the staggered parking method, and also the consultation needs 70% response and a 50% in favor. So these are some of the key items. Are you happy to be part of policy? And are you happy with the process of receiving the flyers, the consultation with the process? And there'll be a cost associated. And we will only, due to the limited timing, we'll only do 4 streets per year. So
that's the bones of that's the bones of it.
Yeah, it was interesting with $1.20 a metre for the line mark. How much will it be for the postage? I mean, so to get to the point where you'd actually do it, would it be 4 mail-outs, 5 mail-outs? No.
Oh, well, there'll be one initial mail out, and then after that there will just be letter drops to offending vehicles while the inspectors are actually doing those stops. Yeah.
And so,
But I guess with the line mark, you've got to think about the ongoing maintenance. While there's that initial $1.20 per metre cost, you then got to worry about the refresh and the ongoing. Okay.
and is and in all like other councils, is doing a written response, is that the only method, or can some people sort of email councils?
Oh, well, that's what we mean by email. It's not, yeah, it's just something so we have something in evidence. So it's not
Yeah.
just coming into the customer service people, blaring at them and then wandering off. There's actually something that's an actual transmittal monitor.
Yeah, and the consultation, you said you're going out talking to residents, that's a door knocking kind of
Oh, it would be a survey letter is what we would do for the.
It wouldn't be a door knock. It would be correspondence through the mail.
Would it be possible to tie that into other issues as well? Sometimes I find is just a survey, you've got a chance to get response from a number of issues.
We can. It's just because it's such an issue in Prospect. We wanted to really target the solution and really not put too much noise around narrow streets. Really focus basically what is your problem. Are you having difficulty parking or manoeuvring through the street? Give us some feedback and see how we can treat it. Really, staggered parking is the only effective way because it really allows even bus drivers, other vehicles to manoeuvre through rather than not only their gun barrel effect that Anders talked about earlier, but also sometimes you get almost like a Mexican standoff and someone literally has to back out or back down through to a crossover or something to allow another vehicle to get through.
Okay, we have Councillor Stanton and Councillor Good.
I have a couple of questions. Is this partly because people can't park their own cars, cars are getting bigger and they're finding hard to actually park these vehicles?
No, it's due to the fact that we have very narrow streets.
But it seems to...
Sedan.
Has it always been there?
It's been an issue.
Okay.
Cars haven't always been there though.
They're getting bigger. There's the SUV effect.
No, the city was surveyed and many streets were laid down before there were cars.
Yeah.
1972, first automobiles in 1905 really, and they didn't become home cars until 1920s, 30s. So by that stage, a lot of the city's been mapped out. Even then, it's only one car per house.
So the other issue is it's just the geometry, of it. If you look at the standard width of a car,
Yeah.
I don't know, from mirror to mirror, a couple of metres. If you're getting under 6 metres, you can't physically have that 3 metres between cars if they park opposite each other.
Yeah.
So that's the dilemma. That's the issue.
I noticed in part of the earlier presentation you were talking about rubbish trucks and emergency services vehicles finding it hard to get through. And nowhere in there it's all about residents complaining. Do we get a lot of complaints from emergency
Complaints we get regarding emergency service vehicles and garbage trucks is from residents.
Okay, so the garbage trucks themselves and the fireys, and they don't seem to have a problem. Okay.
They generally find a way around it. If a garbage truck can't get down the street due to parking, they'll come back later in the afternoon and they'll be able to get down there. Generally, we have an open correspondence with our waste contractor Cleanaway about the issues with street access, and they'll let us know if there's an ongoing issue. So,
The other question I had, and the other sort of point that I had was the consultation seems to happen with the street. Now, my experience of ad hoc parking restrictions happened last year or year before, and it was a previous councillor that had a complaint, as far as I understood. He took it upon himself to actually somehow get the parking restricted, and this was in Buchanan Street in Narsworth. And it seemed to happen without any consultation. The problem that happened was that they restricted the parking. It was largely people who were parking for Narsworth Primary. The problem was that they restricted that parking and it just pushed it over into the next street. And then that made our parking dodgy, and that just kind of pushed it, and it just kept cascading it through. And it seems to be a problem, I find, that if you consult with one street, you're not taking a holistic view, even a street over, people will say, no, hang on, if you do that, that's just going to push it into here. Is there any facility that we can actually, in certain cases, I don't know whether you do it every time, but consult maybe not just with that street, but take a holistic view and say, this will affect, if you fix parking or do parking in this street, this may actually have an impact on the streets adjacent.
This is look, this is a unique case. It really is problems with individuals in front of their own property.
Yeah.
So they won't actually choose to park in another street if you've got restrictions there, because they want to park near their property.
Yeah.
They want to park out the front of their property.
Rightly so, I guess.
Yeah. So I can't see it. I can't see the benefit in consulting with neighbouring streets, because you know yourself that if you can't get a park down your street, you're not going to park in a neighbouring street.
In this case, what would happen was that these were school drop-off people, yes. And because of the nature of the difficulty in parking around the school, they would park up Buchanan. Because they stopped parking at Buchanan, it pushed it over and it created possibly another, just moved the problem from one street to the other. And it could have been probably resolved had they not said, hey, hang on, don't park here.
So those sort of long-term entities or stakeholders like schools, there's a very different strategy around how we treat those. This narrow streets, I'm not sure. Look,
do we have access to the 14 streets? Do we have access to those streets that we're talking about?
I don't have it with me now.
So we can actually just kind of familiarise ourselves.
Some of them are King Street, Lahunt, Vasanki.
Yeah.
They're the typical ones.
Yes. So in theory, I'm just getting my head around this. In theory, if you stagger it, you're going to reduce on-street parking by
definitely
50%?
I'm not sure if it will be that much, but look, there is an example that we've got, and that's with a lot of consultation. That's Cochrane Street, and that was triggered through the reconstruction process of Cochrane.
I personally like the fact that the process that you go through. I think it's entirely fair. I think at the end of the day, there's part of me that says, okay, we want people to leave their cars at home and ride a bike, but if we leave their cars at home, they've got to have somewhere to park the thing. So all these cars that are out, you know, in work car parks during the day are suddenly going to be in front of their houses while people are taking their bikes, because that's what we're trying to encourage. I think you're entirely fair. I think the process looks entirely fair. I do have a concern about consulting if there's going to be a domino effect if you actually create. It sounds like you're not, but I'm not aware of these 14 streets, but I personally would like to see the consultation just be expanded a street over each way. That's my personal.
Yep. We'll take that one. Yep. Councillor Foote and Councillor Lee.
Thanks, Judy. Just a couple of things. First of all, it'd be really good if the policy was flexible enough to say in a street you might have one end which has more problem, another end that doesn't, and so for us to apply treatments to either end, depending on where the issue is, or it might be middle or somewhat. So you might have 5 people really aggrieved by it and 25 not, and so I'm just a bit worried about the 70% will locks us into something that means that we can't have that flexibility. So just a comment on these. In terms of those streets that aren't narrow, that still have issues where we've used yellow lines and cars. So where there's either public facilities in the street where it causes issues, or 2 driveways adjacent to each other. So this policy doesn't touch that, is it right? So will we deal with those on a case-by-case basis? Absolutely. Okay, yep. I just want to make sure we still do that. And the third thing is I'd be really keen, and it's easy to be bold in December, to probably put more money in the budget and do more at once. I think for a year is, how do you choose which for? There's lots of reasons why for an extra 20,000 we could do all of them. So I'd be, as I said, easy to say now when we start talking about $500 projects in it'll be a bit different, but I think we should be bold and actually put money in one year budget or at once.
Thank you, Councillor. Yeah.
Is that like a policy, or is it our policy, and where's the 70%?
We're throwing it to the elected members. That's something that we discussed with our champions the other night to say, well, look, an example was the Sankey, and I'm not sure, Anders, if you want to raise that one, where there was about 100 people who lived down that street. 80 people.
I haven't got the figures. I try to steer away from that.
No, that's right.
Generally, when we've gone out and done consultations, a typical example will be that we'll go out and we'll survey maybe 80, the whole street might have 80 residences. We'll end up getting 20 responses, so 25%. And then from those 20 responses, we might get 12 in favour and 8 against. And it's like, well, you can't make a decision based on that. And so 70% we're seeing has been, I guess, a fair enough margin to consider that you've got enough people interested in this.
Enough of a buy-in
Yeah.
to actually make a good decision for that street.
Just an example of where this has worked really well is Vine Street. In fact, I just got an email from the residents that initially brought up the problem just the other day. A different problem. So you applied that process, you surveyed the street, you gave people options as to what they wanted. They didn't actually want anything because everybody wants to park outside their own house. But the education letterbox drop was the magic key. It's actually changed the way that everybody approaches parking. More people are parking in their driveways, being more respectful. So if someone's parked on one side, they'll make an effort not to park down another.
That's great.
So the policy actually works. I'm just a bit concerned about the 70%, and I get your point, Anders, you really can't make a decision based on a handful of people, but what we know about people returning surveys is that you only get a handful of people. Is it helpful if we engage in that process as well, so you call upon the elected members to engage upon that process? Like a lot of us did lots of in the campaign, so maybe we could spend a few hours doing that and getting a greater response from people.
Ward counts.
Yeah, that's on there.
Good idea to do that.
Well, you could do it. You could do it regardless, but
I'm going to pick up all the good bits.
okay. Each of those streets have their own concerns and want things done in a different sort of way. But what about areas, and I know you said schools, but around the temple where the problem is at night and the problem is people outside?
Around the west, sorry.
That's where the nature of the correspondence, or finding out from the resident when the peak time is occurring. So we can send our out-of-hours inspectors out there.
So that would be included in part of the budget, is that we provide overtime hours.
Oh yeah, yeah.
But that's when the problem happens.
Yeah, and we're aware of that with a lot of these places.
Yeah.
It's outside of our business hours.
Yeah. Have to make sure that we get.
Yeah, because when you say staggering lines, and some I think I've seen one of Evan's Tallis's photos, sorry Tallis, where people aren't respectful of any sort of road rules or considerations or parking rules. I forgot what I was going to say. Oh, so the line staggering may not be helpful in that circumstance. Are we going to consider special places?
We are. The whole staggered parking, unfortunately you're right, some people do abuse it. What we do in those cases is we duplicate it. We put signage up as well as line marking to reinforce the issue. Look, the thing with these narrow streets, and in particular problems that we face on those streets, are very localised. They're not, and the issue that we have here, and going back to the point about 70% consultation, what happens is that it might be only 2 or 3 houses in that street that are experiencing that problem. So the majority of the street don't want restrictions in front of their property or across their property. And that's what's shone through with the ones that we consulted. To go back to Councillor Groot's maybe treatment of just that area, we could, but then there's inequality and there's we might create other issues down there, but that could be considered.
People can request individual line marking.
When you talk about doing the treatment in isolation, so you've already got a problem with people parking opposite, so then you put in those lines in that one little location and people just do it further down.
They might move it.
Yeah, but sometimes the problem's not about the parking and people moving through, it's about people not being able to get out of their driveway. So if you've got someone parked directly over the street, so narrow turning, and then if you've got someone parked here and someone parked here in your driveway, they actually can't get out.
But then that's going to still be the same issue along the whole of the street, isn't it? So if someone's parking opposite your driveway and you can't get out, so you put a yellow mark opposite that driveway, and that person just parks to your next door neighbours and they can't get out, and then it just goes.
Yeah.
And look, believe it or not, the staggered parking is an elegant solution because that's exactly what we had on Cochrane Street, where people were complaining that because of the narrow nature of the street, they could not get out of their driveways. So we actually restricted parking, and by the use of line marking, we allowed them to be able to freely get out and into there. But look, that came at a cost. The cost was parking, the capacity on the street. But they were generally happy with that, the whole street.
And you reduce speeds and volumes as well, so you're addressing several other issues as well.
Thank you, Councillor Evans.
So just trying to work out, so there's 13 affected streets that you've received complaints about, and it's about 96 citywide. So is Cochrane Street one of those 13 that are the problem streets?
Don't know offhand.
Hope not now. Because that's where I'm going with it, is that if we're talking about, say, a dozen streets, and I think going off of what Mark was saying, if we do 4 a year, it's kind of going to be a good 3 or 4 years before streets that we already know are a problem are going to get fixed. Is it worth looking at some kind of budget bid that would incorporate all 12-ish streets that need to be fixed?
Sure.
And I guess just a better understanding of, when we say that, what the cost would be. So we know it's going to be a couple $100,000 still in 96 streets, 97 streets, if it were to be just those 12 streets.
You're looking at about $2,000, or just over $2,000 a street to do line marking and consultation. So if you were to do all 13, I guess $30,000.
30K.
Yeah.
Yep.
All right, very good.
Thank
I'll
you.
bring a more detailed bit when it comes to
And they won't all want line marking, so the cost will be cheaper.
But mostly they don't want it because they see the trade-off.
Yeah, sure.
But the education on Vine Street was particular.
and the education has been working, I've got to admit. The flyers that we put out do work.
Are there any comments from Councillor Larwood?
I think there was a question.
Councillor Lee? Oh,
Set enough.
yep.
Oh,
Are there any comments from?
the education process would have to be ongoing to a degree. So I'm assuming the initial launch of the education process has an effect. 6 months down the track, do we know whether it's repeated again or whether people have gone back to their previous habits? How do we avoid that happening if we don't put in place a permanent solution?
The only trigger would be a complaint.
Like,
So if we get a complaint after
Like
6
act on it.
months, then we'll ramp up the education piece. Unless we do, as I think you're suggesting, we do have an annual plan for ComSafe, community safety. We have an engagement strategy with schools and others. We do similar for narrow streets, that every so often, once a year, whatever that might be, we distribute some flyers across those problem streets. And that might be the 13 first, and then of course there's still a cost of that.
And do you think with the streets that take up the option for the staggered parking, we might see a reverse process where you receive complaints about it, and then people ask to go to consultation about removing it because they decided to claim before you played it?
I've been involved with traffic engineering for a very long time, and traffic is flawed. Attitudes change, vehicles change, usage changes, and there is no one fixed, hard, fast rule. You should review it. You're obligated to. You review it every few years, minimum 10 years, and we see it. And if the demographic has changed or the needs of the people have changed.
And then the last thing I just thought up then was that based on what looks like will happen on Churchill Road with regard to development, bringing a lot more people in along that strip to live along that area, that will increase the amount of traffic that's going up and down those streets and therefore exacerbate the problem.
Good.
But that won't really be known
No, it's fully developed.
Thank you, Mayor Lachlan.
Okay, so congratulations. We're getting pretty close, I think, with the policy here. I've got a couple of things, but they're really minor. I'll bring up in a second. Just for elected members' benefit, this has been a niggling problem for a long time, and we've had a pretty ad hoc approach to dealing with it. Generally, we haven't dealt with it. And we send the inspectors out, and they can't work out who's parked second, so everyone gets grumpy that we haven't solved the problem. The inspectors can't find anybody, and it doesn't appear to be a solution. So we've had some success. Cochrane, the education program, we've run it. So we're trying to capture that and say, well, how can we get organised so that we provide a service to people? But the other side of the same coin is that the residents understand what we will do and therefore what we will not do. So that if we have 2 or 3 people, and I'm sure you've all had them, who say, I'm going to die at home because the way you manage the parking means the ambulance can't get through to save me, somebody is going to die and it could be me, you have to fix this. You can say, you know what, we've got a policy and we're going to go through an education program. The policy says that we're going to do a survey on the street, and if the survey results don't come back really strongly, then there will not be yellow lines. There will be just an education program. Okay, so people go, and get a deep sense of democracy into the local streets in terms of solutions. So it protects us in terms of, we can't promise the world. We can actually now say there's a method, and it protects the staff because we've endorsed a policy that they have to follow if we endorse it. Okay? So they can't go outside that policy. So if someone comes and jumps up and down, Greg and his team can say, council's said this is all we can do. If you want to change it, you better go and lobby some councillors. So we provide certainty on all sides of the equation, and that's what I think is really powerful about it. I agree, though, with the comments in terms of budget. I think we should get on with the 13 that we know are a problem. We should start the surveying and get on with the solutions as soon as reasonably practical. We've got budget this year to start some surveying and education this year. I doubt that all the streets will pick up the yellow lines. The policy's not there to put yellow lines in. The policy's there to say the ultimate solution we'll provide is yellow lines that are staggered. Okay? In other words, that's it. We won't be, helicoptering cars out of the street. We won't be fining cars every day. We won't be putting a yellow line down one side of the street. Harrington's a good example, and that's turned into a bit of a nightmare. So we're getting close. A couple of things I thought, though, could improve it. You've got right at the front end there that no action will be taken unless there's a written complaint received. The language could be softened a little bit to say that the policy will come into play upon receipt of a written complaint. Okay, it just reads a little bit more friendly. And the 70% stuff is tricky, but I think in terms of putting staggered yellow lines in, that's quite dramatic. It's like a $90 fine if you park on it. So I think we've got to have some comfort that the streets actually want this to be done. So I think that's a reasonable benchmark of responses, but you might want to have a two-part to it. Say, for instance, you only get 60% of the responses, but a clear 50% of the premises want yellow lines or don't want yellow lines. So you haven't met your 70% threshold, but you've got over half the street. You've got a majority of respondents. So you might want to have a two-part there that says over 70%, or if there's a clear intent of the majority. So you've got to...
Whatever that bare minimum is. Okay, we'll think about that and incorporate that.
Otherwise you might get stuck. People say, well, hang on a minute, I've gone and lobbied the street and we've got half the people, the other half...
65%.
That's right, yeah.
Fair enough.
And the other thing that might improve it is that the statement there that the only solution would do is staggered line marking. It could be softened a little, but it would be helped with perhaps an information sheet that's attached to the policy that says, here's the things that we know don't work and here's why. And whether you take a photo of Harrington Street and Henrietta or whatever, but show that the gun barrel effect, that's dangerous, it just makes people go faster. Henrietta, we won't tolerate people parking up on footpaths and restricting passageway of mums and prams and gophers and stuff. But I think that would help people understand when they read it why we say this is the only thing ultimately we do. And in the absence of it, we'll just get questions.
So we'll justify why we've taken that approach to stagger.
Yeah, you might want to do it in the policy. You might want to do it as an external document with some pictures.
Sure.
Can I just make a correction for the camera? I said Vine Street. It was actually the Hunt Street.
The Hunt Street.
Yeah.
Street?
One last question.
The Hunt.
Did you have a question?
Yeah.
For many years, I totally understand narrow streets. But one of the solutions they used to use was sort of diagonal parking and one way. And obviously, that might be controversial, but again, I think mentioning before about the increase of traffic, how do we accommodate more parking with narrow streets? And is that something that you might be looking at?
Well, look, that might be something that we could consider in the future, but you need to map out, and that's where you'd have to consult where Mark was talking about a more holistic approach. Because if you're going to talk about making some streets through Prospect one way, that will most definitely have an impact on neighbouring streets. And I would rather bundle that up into the LATM process rather than something external. This is safe.
Talk Engineering doing another...
They are.
They are currently?
Yes. That's
Will that be...
We're going to use them again. It would cost Kenny and oil. All right.
Sorry, I apologise.
Yep. So I guess that sort of restriction in parking we would, or flow of traffic, would bundle it into the RA10 process. But as I was saying, the policy that we're putting forward as far as narrow streets can exist on its own right. It doesn't need to be bundled into 6. Yeah, so local area traffic management, if you don't know, we actually look at it on a precinct basis across the city. There's 4 quadrants of it. We look at classification of vehicle, which is the type of vehicle, speed, and we've also incorporating parking. And when there's complaints that we receive from residents, we address it through that process. And we get an external consultant to carry out that process. And what comes back from that is actual hard data. And we've got a policy, and it's on the net, around when we intervene, as far as when cars are over a certain threshold of speed or volume. Council is obligated through that policy to intervene and do some sort of treatment. And that's, as I said, a rolling program. But that has been suspended for a few years. It's just got back online this year.
Okay, thank you, Greg. Before I go to Councillor Sandon, Councillor Harris, do you have any comments? You haven't spoken on this.
I didn't know what was before that. I apologise, but I've been at a funeral. Put that to one side. I think I know the general area. I believe in the staggering thing.
Yep.
I believe that some people carry on like bird chooks and go crazy. But when you've got to come to a decision and try and look after everybody, it's an idea. First of all, what Greg sort of said, you know, an education sort of thing can work, and some people jump at it and look at it. I see areas like all the schools, but in our case, Nailsworth and that are different. Buchanan in particular, different reasons, and you don't get that much speeding down Buchanan when the drop-offs are all down one side, solely because of the condition of the road. If it was a good smooth road, it would be a problem. So, you know, each of those sort of areas are a bit different. But in the main of looking for it, you can't expect the Peters and that to go out and check which engine's hot and which engine's cold, to who got there first and who got there second, give them both a ticket. So my thing, I wouldn't even feel uncomfortable. Yep. If a decent amount, I don't know where you come with that 70%, I haven't seen that, but I can't think of that. But, you know, a decent amount of people want something done, say, well, look, if you don't straighten yourself up, this is what we're going to do. On this side and that side. And David really picked up one, and opposite your house in the next street and that. You know, there's people that squeal like guinea pigs that they're going to die on their front lawn because the ambulance won't get through, fire brigade won't get through. I don't know if you've seen a narrow street with a fire brigade that can't get through with cars. It just drives through. The cars are quite easy to push along while they're still in gear and on the handbrake. You know, they'll get in to put out a house fire. They'll get in to pick up someone. So it's a real no, and when we've done the things before with trying to do, you know, 40 kilometres, trying to do humps and all that sort of stuff, nearly every safety device we looked at, whether it was a speed limit, whether it was a hump, whether it was a cane, to get from one end of McGuinness to the other end of 3rd Avenue was only seconds with every sort of one of these devices. You know, it's a myth that some people try. It's there, but it's a myth of the amount that some people try and throw at you. If we can convince people to do it properly, yes, but you'll see here time and time we can't convince people. You've got to do so.
Thank you. Last question.
I had one last question, and it was about socio-demographics, really. Is there a difference in response between people who rent and people who buy? Like, people who rent obviously have a lesser investment in what happens in the street. Do they just not respond, or do we have any sort of data on?
Look, I can't comment on that. We wouldn't have any intel on that. Absolutely.
I would just say that about how people feel in their community. I mean, we rented for many years and would respond because we lived in the community. We were affected by things that go on the street. So I wouldn't differentiate between owners or renters one single bit because you live there.
All right, thank you.
There's been the question about whether you should write to property owners as well.
And that was probably where I was going with the question.
All right. So we'll take it from this topic that we have the consensus of the key elements of what was presented by Anders, and the report will go to the January Council. Yep. Thank you. Thank you, Anders.
Thank you.
So our next topic is about Prospect Farmers Market. I would like to welcome Elaine Redcliffe, General Manager of Farmers Market. The key outcome of this particular discussion is to look at see if election members happy with the conditions as per the current agreement, and also if there's a fee, if it's applicable. I'll hand over to Nat to lead us through.
Thanks, Jenny. Yeah, you stole my thunder a bit there. I guess you know that the farmers market's been running for 12 months, and that part of the council resolution back in October 2013 was to review the arrangement and the conditions and consider a licence fee. So the existing conditions included waiving the fee for the first 12 months, and now I thought what a great opportunity to have Elaine present probably from the farmers market perspective of how they've found the first 12 months, and then I've got a few comments I wanted to add from the council perspective, administration perspective. So I might hand over to Elaine. Thank you.
Yeah, so I guess just to introduce myself first. So my name is Elaine Ratcliffe. I'm the General Manager, as mentioned, of the Adelaide Showgrounds Farmers Market Incorporated is our organisation, and we promote ourselves as Adelaide Farmers Market, obviously with the Showground Market on a Sunday morning, and now the second market we've had for the year here at Prospect. I only actually joined the organisation in June of this year, so wasn't actually involved in the planning process for the Prospect market and the operations in the first half of the year, but obviously been involved in the second half of the year. Just so you know something about me, my background has been more in wine and food tourism, working in the region. So I used to manage the Jacobs Creek Visitor Centre up in the Barossa for 7 years, and also was involved in Tourism Barossa and chaired Tourism Barossa for 3 years, and before that was down in the Limestone Coast region. And certainly in the regions, the wine and food tends to work together. For me, it's kind of quite a natural thing to move from wine earlier this year to working in the farmers market. So obviously you've got had the document here, which was our review document, looking at the first year of the operation of the Prospect market. This was basically also went to our committee. So with our organisation, we have a committee which operates as a board that I report to. So again, they've gone through the same process, reviewing after the first year of operation of the market. So I guess in terms of when the background on the site selection and location selection, so certainly the organisation had identified that they were looking to operate an additional market to provide additional outlets for our stall holders, and also to provide an opportunity for additional stall holders. One thing that we manage carefully is to ensure that we have a good market mix within the market, so the range of produce that customers are looking for, but also ensuring that we're not duplicating the sales from different stalls to ensure that it would be viable for stall holders to trade at the market. So having a second market, certainly I provided some additional opportunities for stall holders to move produce through an additional market, but also for new stall holders to come on board. In terms of then looking at the councils, there was then some discussions with various councils, but certainly Prospect was then identified as, I guess, a very supportive council who were keen to have the market come into the area and recognise, I guess, the benefits that it could offer in terms of attracting people on a Thursday evening into shopping locally. But also, you know, it was also identified in terms of the demographics being very similar to the Goodwood area, where our current market has been successfully operating since 2006. We have a large membership base that people actually join and become a member of the market, which gives them a 10% discount when they're purchasing a stall, but also then provides us the opportunity to be able to communicate to people through e-newsletters and similar. And we can also therefore then look at our membership, and certainly with the Showgrounds market there's a lot of local members in the Goodwood area, but also people who live along the corridor along Goodwood Road, but also kind of along Anzac Highway down to the coast. But also we attract quite a few people from suburbs around like Fullerton and Norwood as well, is probably the other kind of catchment area. So we recognised we weren't really attracting many people from this side of the city centre. So Prospect was seen as therefore a good opportunity in terms of the right demographics, It was also close enough it was going to tap into potentially some of our current customers, but not too many, and really tap into really getting more people to shop at the market. I guess a key thing that we're looking to do is trying to change people's shopping habits. Obviously, most people predominantly shop at supermarkets in terms of their food items they're looking for. So really what we're trying to do is get people to change that and become regular shoppers at the market to see that that's an opportunity. So it's about having that range of produce so we can encourage people to do that. So specifically looking to talk now about the year.
Yeah, just maybe this is the
Just
highlight.
a key point. So I guess one thing that we did identify, was identified in the planning stage, that winter was going to be a challenge. And that certainly was reflected in terms of that kind of actual customers. So obviously we started off with some, a real peak when we initially started. We do get affected by the weather. So when there was some particularly hot days in summer, that certainly dropped the visitation against the cooler days. And then certainly through that winter period, we seem to have every Thursday being a cold, wet, particularly day. But we did have a core of customers who had become regular shoppers and would come out regardless of the weather. And similarly, that also then reflected in our stallholder numbers as well. So our stallholder numbers, again, we had an initial peak. It dropped off then a little bit going towards winter. Now part of that is seasonality. So in terms of our showground market, we also obviously have stallholders who have seasonal produce, and that tends to be at its peak in the late spring, early summer and into autumn time, and then there's certainly less fresh produce around in winter. So again, stallholder numbers dropped. But in terms of both visitation and also stallholders, they've certainly then picked up again as we've come into spring again this year. And overall, in terms of stallholders, I guess we've revised our expectations in terms of number of stalls that the market can probably really sustain for the visitors that are coming. So I guess in terms of doing our customer count, we basically count people every hour on the half hour. So we obviously, it's an indication. We don't count everybody going through, but I guess we're using a consistent method each week so we can see the pattern. But the stallholders that were there at the first anniversary this year, 12 of them had been there at the official opening the year before. So certainly there's a good core of stallholders who supporting the market, finding it really good in terms of them as another outlet for their produce. For many stallholders, it's an opportunity for them to get a decent return on their produce rather than selling it through the wholesale markets, which can be very variable in terms of what they can get. So I think that's good. If we're keeping that core of the stallholders and then being able to supplement with some additional seasonal ones at certain times of the year, and then also a few other stallholders who can come who from further away. So for instance, we have one stallholder who's based down at Beachport, so will come kind of at a more or less like on a once a month basis when they're able to combine it with other things that in Adelaide as well. So we're certainly, from our organisation point of view, we're happy with how it has turned out. I guess it was a bit of try and see for the organisation. It was the first time they've run a secondary market. It didn't meet the budget expectations, I guess, that the organisation had set for the first year. So they expected it was going to cost the organisation money, and they're expecting it was going to be around $8,000 was actually what it would cost for the first year. It actually ended up being closer to around $20,000 that it cost the organisation. A lot of that was initial setup costs and additional staffing that was required in that setup phase. So since then we've, I guess, been able to scale back on terms of our staffing resources. A lot of things that are set up like signage and things like that we've paid for, and marquee and things like that. So we've got things now in place. And I guess what we're looking now to do in the second year is try and spend more money on marketing and promoting the market so that we can try and tap into some more future customers and I guess grow that more customer base that we see coming to the market and supporting it each week, which then tends to get supplemented by additional people that come at different times as well. Okay.
Great, thanks Elaine. I might probably hand it over to members for any questions on particularly on the report.
Just one, so from a finance perspective, how far under budget have you tracked over the last 12 months?
Well, overall, when we looked at the financial year, so yes, it was basically, it cost our organisation $12,000 more than we anticipated. So we expected that overall for that year it would operate at that $8,000 loss. We've now revised. Initially, we'd set budget expectations for this year had been set around kind of May, June time, and we were initially budgeting to have around 25 to kind of 30 stores as the average. We've now revised that budget expectation down to a more like an average around kind of 15. So we're basically looking at kind of coming out on more like a break even really, but putting some additional money into marketing and promotion. So this year. So from our organisation point of view, our committee are comfortable with that for this year and going forward.
Just a question about membership. Excuse me, you're anticipating 250 members?
Yes.
What did you do?
We signed up about 200 actually. So yeah, we're very happy with that. We had also a smaller number of members who previously had joined at our showground site and renewed here as well. We're now actually encouraging more members to renew online. So it's probably going to be a bit harder to track this year what the split is in terms of who shops at showground site, who shops at Prospect. So it's probably going to be a bit hard to monitor that, but certainly the core of kind of 200 who did sign up here, we were very happy with.
Before we move on to Matt has further information. Any other questions for Elaine? Yep.
Yeah, the expectations didn't kind of meet your objectives and nor ours really. How would you see coming in fresh eyes? The issue of patronage is a key one. We're not going to get more stallholders if there's no customers. Customers won't come unless there's good stalls, but I think you did that bit fairly right. How are we going to get more patrons there? Because I'm not sure we can help with that more than we've done. We've provided extensive advertising in all the connections we've got electronically and print at a very modest cost or free. It seems that the success of the market is really in your hands. How are you going to double or triple the patronage, which is really what you want?
I guess from our organisation point of view, we're looking to put a lot more resources into marketing and promoting both markets this year. So certainly coming in, I see we probably didn't do enough in the last probably 12 or 18 months for the showground market, and we obviously did some initial promotion here for Prospect, and then it basically just dropped off, and we weren't really doing anything for the rest, certainly that kind of second half of that first year. We weren't actively promoting it. So our committee have basically tripled our marketing and promotional budget. We've taken, we're now working with an agency who provides some marketing and digital advice. So we're actually then looking to, I guess, utilise resources like we've got a really engaged community on Facebook. So we're really looking at how we can optimise that and really look to get them to, I guess, share the word. And certainly with our survey we did with the customers, social media came out very strongly in terms of that's where people heard about it. So we're looking to try and utilise that and find more ways to actually get them to share the word for us, but also to do some more, I guess, traditional advertising, particularly through messenger press, to try and promote additional things that are happening, and also looking at where we can do any additional kind of other opportunities. So being involved in like the terrific event in January, so we're going to have a double stand there promoting the market, seeing that as a great opportunity to really kind of get out and communicate to more people, because every week we do have people come through to the market who are local residents and say, I didn't even realise you were here and I've never been before. So there's obviously still a lot of people that we can tap into out there.
Any other questions for Elaine? Yep, Councillor Larwood.
Are you marketing to kids? Because I know that the reason that we go for my kids say we have to go down and get those oranges and that bread, etc., etc. So is that part of your marketing?
We're certainly looking at how we can work with the local schools more. So trying to do things like the music group for the Prospect Primary School came in and performed a few times. That always then brings in parents and things. That, again, they shared that on Facebook and their appearance but the photos of their parents reach like 1,000 people on Facebook. So again, we're looking at ways we can partner with local schools and target them and see where we can work to develop some partnerships, because I agree, definitely the family-friendly atmosphere again came out quite strongly. We get a lot of families that come down after the school pick-up and kids that really enjoy the market experience. So I think that is a great opportunity for us.
Thank you. Any other questions? Yep, one question before Matt moves on. Yep, 2 questions.
David pretty well covered, and I'm not going to make you say all the same things again. But in following particularly what David said, because I was going to sort of ask, where do we go to try and increase? Last Thursday, I think it was here, and I was fairly surprised from our side, the empty car parks, because you're not allowed to park there because of the market, and so they were empty, you know, so it wasn't there. The bulk of the stores came out the back door and went, it was there. Back in the earlier bit you said, a lot of it with the store came by season, you know, particularly fruits, I suppose, and veggies comes by season, and it drops off later. If we got 11 or 12 there now, and in my thought that is the season, it's coming now, like Christmas and that, so we might actually even lose some of them when it just comes to apple and pears later on, isn't it?
Yeah, we've actually got about 14, 15 is our average at the moment that we're getting. And yeah, there are a few seasonal ones, like actually the apple and pear people aren't there at the moment, so we're selling a few just through our information stand, just because again the families really wanted that fruit, but if there wasn't, they don't have enough stock, so it's viable for them to run a full stall at the market at this time of year until their new season produce will come in kind of late February time. One thing that we've also done as well is feedback is people do prefer shopping in the kind of plaza area. Obviously this time of year there's nice shade from the trees, so we've actually condensed and got more stalls to move up into that area and less in the car park. So once they set up, then we move the bollards to allow some extra parking spaces in the car park, although they don't always obviously get utilised. But we do have a couple of the bigger stalls who have the fresh vegetable produce who need to kind of have their trucks or utes alongside just for the amount of produce. So they tend to want to stay in the car park area, but we've tried to get others to move up more. It's a bit more pleasant under the trees.
All right. Matt has a few more stories to tell. I'll hand over to Matt for his PowerPoint.
Thanks very much, Elaine. So just a couple of points from the council administration perspective. Council's contribution has been pretty minor in terms of cash up front. We paid for some signage, which was under $1,000. But there's been some staff hours, in-kind staff hours involved in the setup with operational issues, as well as communications and promotion. So that's really quite a low commitment at the moment. I think there might be maybe an hour or two a week across the organisation staff time that go into some coordination or some liaison with the market coordinator. There's some power costs. So in the agreement, there was going to be a determination about splitting the accessing to the council's power, and a temporary meter was going to be set up, which I understand hasn't happened as yet, but we're going to work through that. But in the meantime, what the showgrounds, the markets organisers have done is they hire their own distribution board, which sits next to the council board. Obviously, it's still tapping into the same power, but going by, I think Elaine mentioned some of the power, looking at the power use of the Forestville markets versus here, and it's probably around maybe $20 worth of power a market, so pretty marginal. That's something we need to work on sorting out for the following year. The other probably things that we probably should consider in your decision around setting a fee, and there will be a report coming to next Tuesday's meeting, and I'm looking tonight for some guidance on where that fee might sit or whether there will be a fee. Some other key points are the place activation component of the markets. My report that's coming next week has got some feedback from some of the local traders. About 45 traders were asked their opinion. I think 10 of them got back to us, and a couple of those, there's mixed responses. I think a couple of them thought it was going to change the world on Thursday nights, but there's a couple of very positive ones as well who have written testimonials saying how they've increased their hours and their trade's gone up as well. So that's part of the mix of the information you'll get.
Can I just ask you a question there?
Yeah, sure.
So when you asked the traders and that, which you weren't here last year, one of the things when it came to do this review was to ask the two types of trades, I suppose, on Thursdays, the ones that would have an effect, i.e. coffees and that sort of stuff, and then Joe that sat here, the fruit markets around and that had the opposite to the feeling. So are those the sort of people, particularly if the fruit and veg people around made comments to you?
Yeah, look, the 45 were really in the core heart, so it didn't include Adelaide Fresh, but I made a point of, in the first couple of weeks of starting here, I went down and met Joe and talked to him about issues that he saw with the market, and I was asking him if he had any sort of quantifiable evidence if it had affected his sales, and he couldn't really produce anything, and it seemed he was more comfortable with the market than he was when it was originally brought in. Yeah, that's probably all I can say on that.
Sorry, can I just follow up on that? Can that be covered off in the report next week? Because that was probably the biggest issue we had in the debate last year. And I think Joe made the time to come here to talk to us. He spoke to me individually, both the Traffic Council at the time individually. And again, I said this a few weeks ago, on the night, we said to Justin, make sure that's incorporated into anything that comes back to council in the time, and we're sure that Mark will remember this at the time. Yeah, we'll make sure we cover that off. Because I just think that's one of our biggest risks.
Yeah.
If we continue with the support and farmers market, is alienating some of those providers. And Joe might not be the other one, I can't remember who else.
Wendy's Foodland
Yeah.
and Coles. We shouldn't single out Joe just by having him as the only one. You're quite right. We should go to the three. And they are the only ones who are likely to lose. Everyone else should gain a little or a lot.
It's just good to cover that up. Another quick conversation.
Yep. Noted, thanks.
If Vine Street was identified as the best place, because I know they've been crying out for other passing over the other side of Main North Road to activate spaces. Was there consensus? Especially, I guess, because there is the bike lane between the 4 and 6 as well, it makes parking more efficient for this particular market.
So I can't answer that. I'm not sure if any other areas were looked at in the council area when they were establishing the market.
The market asked us for this space.
Okay.
Yeah. So we didn't suggest another. Is there another?
I'm just saying, for anyone in the other wards,
Yeah.
it might be an opportunity.
So
Wood's not. Think about it.
It's yours. It's my local area.
So there has been some identified probably improvements that could be made in considering any improvement to Vine Street Plaza that would help a market or any other sort of temporary activation of that space in the redesign or more improved infrastructure in the area. Weatherproof shades would be probably one that would be needed, as well as better power access, power pits in the ground and water access to water as well. But that could be part of another future project or a budget bit if there was an appetite for redesigning of Vine Place to suit markets and other sort of community events.
Can I then just put in the last tip over there? No? Heard a few no's. I heard someone saying
Say no to Moira.
Right, that's how it starts.
Marcia,
To
get it
follow
right.
up a bit here, because you can't have the bikes, or you can have the bikes, you can run over them here on the main road, no parking. Just by the visual of some of this bit being empty, that, and till hopefully you grow, no problem with that. If we're sticking into that Vine Street, that maybe then a serious look again at opening up all the time, not just on hack, opening up half of that car park or something so people can park there. Because very honestly, you go past, and a couple of times I was going to call in for a Bo Peep, and you can't park, so I didn't even bother to go around the back, because I knew that was off, you know, so you just kept going. So if, you know, we'll have it to start with until it grows again. Thanks.
And there's another interesting point about the farmers market and the role that might play in a future tourism type of project along the lines of a experience trail, which could be showcasing the local best food producers and those type of things. Anything related to the market, such as a community garden, maybe people who are doing good community gardens and that type of thing. I know that the patron for the show, for the showground markets, the Rosa Mata, has expressed interest in coordinating that. She's had a couple of meetings with me since I've been here. I think she tried to do something like this a number of years ago, and she's got her energy back and is keen to push it again. And she knows that the market could be an anchor to that, and a bit of a showpiece. So that's another potentially exciting project and something the market does bring to Prospect. Just quickly, and these are summary of probably the main conditions. They're all pretty standard type of conditions. There were some changes to access requirements for toilets. It was deemed not necessary to have access to toilets. And the green event waste requirements are being met. The actual storeholders are responsible to the licensee, who is the Adelaide Showgrounds Farmers Market. So we're really focusing on what type of conditions should be part of the continuing 12-month agreement, as well as a fee for next Tuesday's meeting. Thank you. That's it from my session. Thanks.
Yep. So what Matt is seeking is in Matt's report to Council next Tuesday. Most of the conditions will remain similar to what is in the current agreement, and fee is the only other issue that has not been discussed, because for the first year the fee was waived. So now this is the second year, and the duration of the second agreement or consideration of a fee. Just open to the floor. Yep, Councillor Lowell. Thank you.
Thank you.
In the report, so will the report include details provided by these guys about specifically what they're going to commit to over the next 12 months in order to grow the concept? Because to me that was quite interesting and something worth exploring even further, but I'd like to know what their intentions are. So what sort of marketing programs are they going to put in place? What sort of new things are they going to bring that continue to pick that was interesting to get them coming back, because they know there's going to be something new and exciting every couple of weeks. So do you think that there is something which they can provide you with to include?
To date, they've only provided really high-level sort of income, expense, for actuals and forecasted, and the commitment that they're going to increase their promotions budget. That is not broken down into individual elements, but I could ask for that if you like.
I think I'm not sure what you guys think, but as much detail as they can give us, because at the end of the day, it sounds like we're charged with making decisions as to whether we keep or throw it out, we keep it under certain circumstances, and for us to make that decision fully informed, we need to know what they're going to do.
Yep.
I think a marketing strategy would be a good thing to ask for, and detail, because that's the thing that's not working.
I have one little question. Let's say all this works, is there a sort of a ceiling to how many people, how many traders and people and car parks? And
it was, yeah, 30.
And so if it becomes, they really do a good job of it, could it actually become a sort of its own enemy at some stage?
Terribly successful, yes. We're nowhere near that though, I don't think. It is hard to get a car park, and if they're going to have 15, we should put some pressure on to free up some more of the car park. If that's what if they're going to commit to only 15. But previously it was 30. We've never had 30, never. What would happen if we had it being wildly successful? People being crushed, cars parking all the way down Vine Street.
In a narrow street.
I'll start to worry when I see the car park behind Commonwealth Bank full, and it hasn't been yet.
All right, so that's the level.
Yeah, so there's a laneway that connects. So we're nowhere near. We're nowhere near that yet.
I think the car parking point is a good one though. Their entire model is stop off on the way home and get your fruit and vegetables. And if you can't stop on the way home, it's a big problem.
The pop-in model.
The pop-in model.
Councillor Good?
Matt, have you had any conversations with them about the fee? there's been a discussion about the potential of us charging a fee and what that fee might be?
No,
And what their
no.
capacity to pay a fee?
No, it hasn't.
There's a fine balance between, if we come out next week and say you're going to charge them $5,000 a year, there's 5 street pays for us, but on the flip side they might say, well, we'll go somewhere else.
Yeah, I guess.
It'd just be useful to have your commentary on that in some way so we can kind of get a bit of feel.
I guess from my observations and in my professional opinion about knowing about these type of activation events, I would think a very nominal fee just to formalise the agreement, that there's a recognition that there's a formal agreement there for the next 12 months would be appropriate, because I believe that it brings there's nothing happening there on if it leaves, there'll be nothing happening there on a Thursday night, and they are activating the space, which I understand is something that the council would always want to be doing anyway, so they're doing on our behalf.
Yeah. And I guess that's the balance for me about not wanting to push them away, wanting to keep them here because that's what we decide. I mean, they use street pay saying check, but I mean, it might be a good opportunity to say, well, don't pay the fee, but funds our street pay. Yes, yeah, or not one. One or several. But yeah, it's just a creative way of kind of looking at it, and ways that, because I think we'll talk about street pays in another workshop, no doubt, but I think generally people are supportive of it, there's one way to fund it outside.
I think it's much of a street party and have it stalled there.
I think paying something, regardless of whether it's a small amount or a large amount, is a good idea because it engenders commitment and recognises that we're providing something of value. And so there, but I wouldn't think that it would be of any level that would make them seriously consider moving out. Because I think that the activation of the area is good. Yeah, it just really comes down to. So do you think that what they've looked at forms the basis of the gap analysis between what they've currently got and achieving what they'd like to, and therefore they've got a clear direction for where they've got to go and what they've got to do to bring it all together to make it more successful, or is it just a little bit of anecdotal evidence?
They've been through some pretty big organisation changes in losing Amanda Daniel and now Lane starting, so I think they lost some traction there. I think there might have been some board member changes as well, so I think that would have had an impact on some of the marketing and maybe some gaps in marketing as well. But as the Mayor mentioned, I think the council, every publication I've seen of Prospect Magazine's had a big story in there. I know there's been a fair bit of social media through City of Prospect platforms. It was very encouraging to hear them. They've engaged a professional digital agency for running some of their marketing, which is a good sign, I think.
Councillor first?
Yeah, just I wondered what sort of car she drove here to see if she's as safe as the rest. But my thing comes, well, the Mercedes and the Volvos that were here last year. My thing comes from the other traders that do the same thing here, own their property, lease their property, pay rent on their property, whatever, but physical dollars change hands. I agree with the previous council and now hopefully this one that it will be still good to have and promote, so I don't want to chase them away. But I feel we should be charging a fee of some sort, and I do agree actually if a street party costs $450, think of 3, that's $1,200, we charge them $1,200 a year, then we don't feel guilty when we pay 3 street parties. But something, because the concern of some of the other ones were, that were brought up here, was, we've got to pay for the rubbish to go away, we've got to pay for the lease of the land, we've got to pay, all those sort of things. So I believe we should have a fee for it to be here. I don't think, particularly, say this year, I would like to say the same fee for the next couple of years, but for this year, I don't think it should be high. But I think, and I don't know whether I say 1,500 or 2,000. I'm not a person on how much something's worth, but I believe we should have a fee, and I believe it should come to us and then into our general revenue to do something, think in their mind or past, just so for the people that have got the shops here, it's just that extra. So I think it should be a fee, but I don't want to chase them away. So not 25,000.
Yep. Mr. Evans?
But potentially we could look at it from the perspective of an earn-out as well. So we charge a very small nominal fee for them here, and then we have some skin in the game with the success, where they start achieving certain benchmarks. The fee is contingent on those certain benchmarks. So we could even run it at a loss with the nominal fee to have some skin in the game, and then from there we get the ticket based on how successful it is, assuming it will be more successful.
So the more successful they are, we up the price. So it's like paying a CPI fee or something like that.
Exactly. So if they get, say, twice the patronage they've currently got, our fee goes up by 10%.
Bit of a reverse incentive though. So you've got to be careful. I don't think we're talking sheep stations. I would have thought we should charge them $1,000 to cover the power. I think if Joe Chinella found out that not only do they get the site for free, but we give them electricity, he'd go nuts. So I think $1,000 should be the minimum. And I would have thought $500 for a site fee, which takes account of our administration and rubbish collection and that sort of stuff, would be the sort of order we're talking about.
Would there be anything, we're just chucking around ideas, I suppose, would there be anything wrong with Joe Chanel setting up a Chanel's Artisan Bakery stand at the farmers market?
Hang on, his own bakery, that's interesting.
If people have got things which are, if they produce things which are in line with the philosophy behind the farmers market, would there be anything to stop them using it as an opportunity to expand their selling opportunities and promote their business?
Is that our concern though? Because they have rules about who can and cannot trade,
really
so that actually wouldn't be out. I don't think that would be fall under
Well,
our
that's what I don't know,
Yeah, I think that would be up to him.
He would. So you've got to produce it yourself in South Australia and sell it yourself. So but you as a farmer have to sell it, and you can bake or create goods made from South Australian product, make it yourself, sell it yourself. So with his bakery now, he may be able to comply, provided his ingredients are South Australian, and they audit. So he could possibly have, beforehand there's no way he could, because he was a middleman.
Yeah.
He didn't grow any of it, he took it and sold it.
Any other comments, Councilwoman?
No, because I was going to ask Matt, would it be, I wouldn't have any clue about what fee you set, but doing it at cost to us, I think is probably a sensible idea. It seems silly that they haven't discussed that with us, because I'm pretty sure the initial conversation was, let's trial it, let's not charge, but we would consider it in future years. So I'm just a bit surprised that they haven't actually, or maybe the corporate history's gone and they've forgotten. But
there was discussion to pay in the end.
Yeah.
So, Councillor Barnett, oh, sorry, you haven't finished?
Are the conversations with you around, let's not, like the suggestions are, well, it would be better if we didn't pay a fee, or?
No, I'm not going to, I haven't had any, no.
Because they have demonstrated they've run at a loss this year, so that gives you an indication of the position.
Lastly, Councillor Barnett, you've just walked into do you have any comments?
Yeah, I agree.
Yep.
It's doesn't given it a trial, and I've been a bit disappointed, I guess, that it hasn't been better ordered. And because then there's you have the feelings of some of the local businesses that produce, not same but similar produce. I guess their argument is, well, they have to pay rates, and so there's a bit of rancor there. So it's been the general discussion to continue.
The general discussion fee should be a consideration. So the condition is very similar to what we had in the agreement, and fee should be one of the considerations, and also some information from the farmers market about their marketing strategies and how do they move forward.
Looking at parking.
And the parking issue. Yep.
Marketing plan.
Marketing plan, yep. So, yep, the marketing strategy, marketing plan, how to close the gap. Yep. So, we'll leave it to Matt to actually discuss to come up with a proposal. Matt, is it coming to a December council?
It's coming to next week's council meeting, and of course the councils have the decision to have the power to change any recommendation I put forward.
If on the assumption you can get the additional information, that may not get to the next Tuesday's meeting if you've got.
So it's the urgency.
I want to follow up with the owners
Yep.
in the next day.
But maybe we won't make the commitment absolute. It'll either be the December or January meeting.
Is there any implication to go to the January meeting?
No.
No. So it may be to the January meeting because the agenda closed.
What I heard was see the 3 grocery supports, fruit and veg suppliers, get some feedback and put it in the report in writing.
And also,
So it's on record. Get a marketing strategy out of them. I like that idea. Detailed marketing strategy. Try and rationalise the parking, which means we'll have to pull signs out, or if they can put Hessian bags over the signs they decide they don't need on that particular Thursday. Otherwise the sign still says can't park there. So, and some kind of fee structure recommendation. So that we've got.
Thank you.
I just had one last thing, because the reason we wanted them there, apart from some people that might have wanted their particular veggies, but we wanted them there because we thought it was a good service to the residents, and it'd be good for the residents because they'd want to use it and encourage things, fill the Vine Street, fill that, and they also help the traders around locally. If they're not running good and they're not getting the people, then it means the people aren't supporting it. I'd still like to see it go. I don't want to end that. But the people have to be some gauge, because if they're not getting the local people, it means it's local. So maybe there's something else that the local people want. I don't know if I said that properly. But.
So that will come through from the gap analysis.
Yeah, I didn't get a very clear impression from the report about their surveying of their potential customers, or current customers, whether they surveyed their own market. That was a very low number that replied. So I didn't get any sense that that surveyed customers. And also, I'm clear in my mind what are our actual costs to us as a council.
Christine, I mentioned just before you got here, so some of the costs were about under $1,000 worth of signage for initial setup. That's what the council paid for. And then there's been in-kind staff hours contributed to operational things, as well as marketing and promotions, and that probably would equate to 1 to 2 hours a week at the moment. And then on top of that, there was some power costs, which as per the original agreement, conditions of the original agreement, that was going to be apportioned or charged back to the licensee, being the market coordinators. And because they haven't, we weren't able to sort out, understand the history, there was no switchboard. There needs to be a pattern of use determined, so they've set up a temporary switchboard, but that needs to be, they need to calculate what the true cost of it is. But they've done a rough assumption on the markets held at Forestville, and based on power use of 80 stall holders over there, 10 stall holders here works out to be around $20 per market in power a week.
All right. Thank you. We conclude that agenda item. Anything else?
Thank you.
All right. Second last item is about audit committee terms of reference. So I've only extracted out the membership component of the terms of reference. So the outcome of this particular discussion is to look at how can we make the membership more flexible in its composition. So I can open to the floor, or we do have a few options in mind. So first option is we could get rid of 6.1.1, which says at least one member of audit committee is to be a woman and at least one member is to be a man. So that depends on elected members. I guess your opinion, how important is this clause? That is one option. Second option, we could increase the number of elected members. I think when we first discussed the terms of membership a while ago, I think council prefer to have more independent members than elected members. So if we were to appoint an elected member, we have 3 and 3. The chair is always going to be, according to terms of reference, going to be the independent, but the chair does have a voting right. Alternatively, we can also increase another independent member. So to have 4 independent members, currently 2 elected members. But by doing that, as per the Act, we only require 1 independent. We already currently have 3. So I'm open to the floor. What I feel most logical will probably be 6.1.1 to I guess, delete that particular clause, but I'll guide it by you. Done it? Yes. Yeah.
What I mean,
yeah.
Practice is that we as the elected members don't actually vote. In practice, it's not a procedure or a policy, but you know, we're just sort of
perception is better to come from independent.
Yeah. That any decision making comes from the independent on there. It's not so that the elected members don't have a
That's right.
Or whatever. My feeling is just that I think we're supportive of being a council that supports promoting
balance,
gender wherever we can, but it could just we could nearly have gotten to the point where it's a bit ridiculous, because if we have no women on council, but then you would have had to change it at any rate, then you get women that are maybe, it's good experience and all that, but perhaps put into a committee that, you're like your boss there simply because of your gender. So I don't think that's a good thing either. So I was looking more for a clause in there that said something like be at least 1 man and 1 woman, unless
as far as it's practical.
Yeah, as far as the wording of that.
So practical could be there are no women, or it could be no woman wants to go on.
That's right.
Yep. I'll just check with Major Government. Is that sort of as possible? Yeah.
If there are nominees or something like that.
Yeah. Yep. Sorry, Kate.
My suggestion on that was, I think, if possible, be 1 man and 1 woman. But I mean, it's still
where
subjective.
possible. Yeah.
Yeah, where possible.
Yep.
You're still playing around with words.
Yep. Yep. Sure.
Yeah, I got a problem.
It will be either man or a woman. All right, we'll come back to you in 1 sec. Councillor Barnett.
Because we could also technically run into problems where in other places where we've got that as well.
Yeah. Yep.
I think we've found we can't change it, the development
I'm
quite sure about that. Yeah.
I think the terms of reference is supposed to be under the related links in. There's nothing there. That's not actually a term of reference of that, is it?
I'm not quite sure.
That's something we would like. So we discuss it when we vote for people, but it's not.
We'll have a.
I can't find it. But I can't find it.
I thought it was at least 1 man and 1 woman. Is that right?
Yes, that's right. Yep. Yep.
I thought that was on that there, but I thought that was not set by us, but set by the
Section 41 committee. Right. All right. I'll go to Councillor Good and Councillor Lee.
Look, a couple of things from me. I would be uncomfortable getting rid of 6.1.1. For me, I think it's a principle that we should, all of our committees, notwithstanding what Christine has just said, but I think it's very healthy to ensure the gender balance, and it might mean it's uncomfortable for some people. I'm supportive of that. One way around, I think, as you've identified, Ginny, is increase membership, and I think you'd have to increase on both sides in terms of and council membership, because I think it's very unwise to have majority or equal vote on more than risk from a council member point of view. I think it should have the majority to gain that. And then obviously recruitment of that position would be almost targeted to a woman, Bridget Ward possibly. But I just think getting rid of that altogether is not a good idea. I don't think we can also pick and choose about which committees we have and which ones we don't. I think it's a principle we should have as a council, as opposed to it's a bit hard there because no one likes that topic, but it's easy up there because everyone does. So I just think whatever decision we make, whether it's to keep it or not to keep it, we should apply equally across all the committees. I just want to say, you said, Christina, that council members don't vote. That we said. Because the terms of reference say quite clearly only members of the committee entitled to vote, members can vote. Unless otherwise required by the Act not to vote, each member must vote on every matter that's in the committee.
They do all vote, but I think probably
But Christine said,
the mover and the seconder, I think that's what Councillor Barnett's referring to.
Oh, sorry, I think he said you didn't vote. I was just speaking.
Yeah, I don't know, maybe.
no, I have to say she said mover and seconder.
Okay.
Wouldn't break the law.
Oh, surely not.
Or whatever.
So increased membership for both.
So unless one of the female members of the council have a change of heart and really want to go on the committee, my preference would be to increase the membership, which I know comes with a cost and a burden and all that.
Yeah.
But
Of both an independent and an elected.
well, I think it's actually both.
Yeah.
I'd be uncomfortable with having those members having the same vote on this particular committee.
Thank you, Councillor Lee.
Well, I disagree with you on that. I think if we put in language where we try everything we can. If Christina wasn't here and it was down to Alison and I don't know how Alison feels, but I would feel I would be doing an absolute disservice on that audit committee.
But by changing the membership numbers, the obligation is on elected members to be the board.
But it just becomes a cast of thousands, and we're already got more independence than what we are obliged to do. I just think every time we can't keep increasing committees.
Sorry, I'm saying what I was saying. So the actual selection process of independence is the nub of the matter for this particular time.
We didn't get any female applicants.
Yeah.
No, not one.
Not one female applicant. So, and it still doesn't solve the problem. You could just keep increasing the membership, but if you don't have women wanting to be on that committee, then as Christina said, it's not okay if you are obliged to be there because you're only chicken. That's not okay. So I don't see how increasing membership is going to solve the problem. I think
If you want the recruitment process is right in terms of independence.
you don't get females applying, and you don't get females on nominating themselves onto this committee. I mean, what difference?
I think if practical or impracticable is just a cop out. I don't know. It's just my idea.
We agree there are nominations.
Well, there are no. Well, I know we didn't have women apply. But my question is, do we go to the Premier's Women in Boards Committee and say, we're looking for someone for our organisation? Could you recommend somebody? Probably going to get a woman to that process. So there are ways to recruit.
Yeah, I was more opposed to the word where possible, having it for the grounds that the sheer fact that in this case we got 3 women on the thing, so it's possible. So to say where possible, it is possible, because it doesn't matter if they're working 49 hours a
possible
day.
if we say no, Alan.
No, but to fit that, where possible, it is possible. So that's why I was sort of either looking, either it's in or it's out, because one or the other. But I think in one principle, and I have to agree with the Deputy Mayor, that wherever possible, and I don't want to keep using that word because I just blew it, wherever possible, we should try and have both, on the thing, or by a lot of governing partners, also the third person, so the 3 different types. But where practical, it comes a bit hard with an 8-person sort of council, not a big council. Some of look at all the other committees we got, it just comes a bit impractical. And last term you looked at, we only had 2 people. And one of you was sick, or just a comment you make, it just makes it real hard. And in my head, wherever we, as a council, we should be trying to promote all the time to have the equals. Should never ever drift away from that. But with wording in some of these, I could let some of those go it's going to be a bit pointless.
So does that mean it's a where possible solution?
No, I just don't like, I'm not happy with having in where possible, because the sheer fact that we've got men, now, let's look at it the other way, we're just saying where possible woman, let's look at where possible.
Yeah. Councillor Bowman? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. Councillor Bowman?
Same as a man.
So I think it was on an agenda item with our council meeting to reappoint people of the audit committee, and I did raise that at the time, but why weren't we seeking a female member of the independent? Yep. And so I think maybe the onus is more on the council staff to seek independent members who represent the gender balance.
It wasn't in the terms of reference, that's what, not specifically, but it can be adjusted in the terms of reference to say that the independent must be, you must have a woman. Yeah, that could be. It wasn't currently on the terms of reference. It's just the whole composition should be a male and a female. So
I mean, maybe with the independent members it could be man and woman, and with the council members it could be web actors. Maybe.
In that case, if based on that, we should just then have a clause to say that independent must be a male and then silent on elected members.
But then you're going to have the same problem.
Yes, it is.
Recruit, even though you've gone through everything, and you still can't.
I don't believe you cannot recruit a woman to this role. I think that would be highly unlikely. I know we haven't today. But look, I think that's spot on.
When you're running for council, so I'm an interior designer, right? So my strengths are visual design, ideas. That kind. I'm not a numbers person. Excel spreadsheets scares me. But to be effective, I'm running the graph. Quite happy. But I think I would be. My skill set is not suitable to that. But if you're going through the staff, you can target, recruit people with a skill set with a gender balance. They've got a bit more of an option to do that.
Yeah.
Whereas you don't want to be put upon in a role that you're not comfortable with.
I mean, if we have a term of reference for every committee, and you're the only female on council,
Yeah,
we want to bloody understand it. Every
Yeah.
committee meeting you have to show up to. That's not.
Ginny, even I think I can get on something.
Yeah.
Independent. The thing you can control, you can't control that.
Yep.
20,000 residents.
Yep. Yep.
So, as an option in terms of going forward, could we change the term, make the inclusionary statement relating to
independent. Yep, that's the.
And also give us an out to run until such time they're re-elected. We run with whatever committee we have.
Yep.
Be all marked for next year.
But could I suggest, because I think that's where we're heading, that where there's two or more independent members, there must be one of each gender. Possible, practical, that's just...
Yep.
And we just have to fill it. I think you're right, that's a great suggestion to go to the boards committee. And the elected membership, it might be, I'm not real happy about this, but where there are committees that are comprised of both elected members and independent members, that gender balance is desirable. Should there be nominations from elected members? Should there not be nominations from elected members, has to be out.
Yeah, I like the word nomination.
Yep.
If we don't receive a nomination from a female, then there doesn't need to be arm twisting going on. But it's only where, I think Mark's right, you need to apply this across all the committees. I don't have this kind of special rule, just for this one. And I highly acknowledge that we all want to get tellers on it because it can actually count. And why the hell wouldn't we? Don't you laugh, Alison? When we want to redecorate the town hall, we'll be putting you on that committee, and that will drive you nuts, don't you worry. You did that before. But so if we have a consistent policy framework that says where there's two or more independents, gender balance, where there's a combination of independents and elected members, we'll seek balance in nominations. But should there not be a balance, then we'll still proceed. Where we've got a committee just of council, absolutely, there should be one of each gender. And if we get a council where there's only one gender on it, well, then we'll have to adjust the rule, obviously, but I hope we never have to.
You can just put it in the terms of reference.
No, you don't. I think I deal with it.
Situation A, followed by B, C, D, and F.
Councillor Anna?
But broadly support what's been discussed. I think the spirit that we're all aligned with is that wherever desirable, wherever practicable, wherever we can, we will see gender balance on committees. For whatever reason, this is an issue at the moment, and I think if we are careful with our wording and look at those appointed directors, and certainly there is scope to appoint, people of gender balance onto an audit committee. So I think, I broadly agree with the spirit that we've been talking about. So I'm happy with your approach.
We just need to tighten it up, because I mean, the sentiment you've got, bang on. But if we don't tighten this up, you find all sorts of ways through it. Right? So because we set policy, we've got to make sure we're disciplined, and people reading it have to know that there's a discipline as well. Because the policy is the city's policy. So we won't have to leave that with you, Ginny and gang, to wordsmith it, so we don't write it as a committee tonight.
No, that's fine.
Just mentioning that will mean with the independence on the audit committee
On the-
that Barry
Yep, that's right. I was
return.
That's right. So with that amendment, what that will mean is Barry Smith, one of our independent members that will finish in 2016, which will mean that basically what Councillor Bowman is saying, that there will be no opportunity for him to return reappointment.
After that time.
After that time. Yep.
One of them's got to go.
Because that's right. So that will mean that. Yes? Okay. Yep. Councillor Sanders? Yep.
I agree with what the Mayor has said, that there needs to be in there if there is nominations. I fully support the idea of gender balance as long as we don't slavishly do that at the expense of quality committee members. If we're going to take people who have no idea about the subject or passion or any sort of skills whatsoever, if that overrides the idea of gender balance, then that seems to be counterproductive to the committee, if nothing else.
Yeah.
So where there are nominations, I fully agree with that.
Yep.
And
Okay.
I think what you were saying there before was spot on.
Okay, great.
Discipline sentiment. Where we got to?
I'll just quickly, Councillor Lau, do you have any further comments before we wrap this up? Okay, thank you. That was that item. The next one is about elected members' residential seminar. I'll hand over to Mark.
Yeah, I'll talk about this just briefly. The elected member training has got a policy associated with it. In previous years, the policy has been that the council usually sends the mayor and 4 elected members to the LGMA conference, which is a national conference. The LGMA is a Local Government Managers Association. It's generally focused towards the administration of councils, but there are often a number of elected members that attend these conferences. So the council has a policy which says that's what is normally allowed, and year by year there was usually 4 would go one year, 4 would go the next year, and so forth. In recent years, however, the council has chosen not to pursue the policy, has chosen to step outside the policy by organising some specific training for all elected members as a group. And for example, 2 years ago, the elected member group travelled to Melbourne and had a look around at some main streets and looked at high density development and main street operations and things like that, and did so as a group, and I believe got some good benefit out of doing so. So they did that instead of sending 4 people to the LGMA conference. And there have been other occasions as well. So what I need to do is to find out tonight what the view of you as the new council would be going forward, because we need to be deciding fairly soon if we're going to go back to the policy of having 4 elected members plus the mayor attend the LGMA conference, or have an alternative. And my view is that the alternative would be better, in that being this is the first year of the new council, I would recommend that the council does have some kind of residential seminar where we have City of Prospect specific training and planning we want to undertake as a group. What we would look to do is enable that to occur probably in March of next year, and to undertake maybe a two-day session, maybe a Saturday, Sunday, where we go away, have a full day, have an evening and half the next day, where we do some strategic discussions. We talk about the key attributes of the council, individually, you as elected members, staff, and really do a familiarisation process. I think that would be highly valuable myself to do so rather than send a delegation away this current coming year. That doesn't negate, however, the opportunity for individual elected members to participate in key specific training opportunities. So just so you know, we have a budget annually of around $32,000 for elected member training. We currently have around $25,000 remaining in our budget for this current year. So we do have the opportunity to do some good training with that. And there will be additional pieces of training rolled out throughout the calendar year, or the rest of the financial year. But I do think we have the opportunity to have, as I suggested, some kind of residential seminar or training undertaken. So tonight I'm just seeking some comments from around the table about that opportunity, both from do we have some kind of consensus that one way is better than the other, and if we do look towards having a residential seminar or conference, City of Prospect specific, what the preferred dates would be. And the administration have identified one date or two dates being the 14th and 15th of March, if that is suitable for elected members. And I just ask that question. So if I can hand over to the floor as to what your views are on the style of training, and if the style of training is a residential seminar, what those dates might look like for you. So, yeah, I think it would be good.
Having done both, the LGMA conference is interesting, but you don't come back and act on anything pretty much. You just go, wow, that was interesting, and that's about it. It's good fun. The entertainment's fun. You meet other people. It's a networking opportunity, really. The seminars are really good. You really get into the nitty-gritty of stuff. There's good camaraderie. It's relevant. It's specific. It's purposeful, and I've found those really, really valuable, very targeted sort of stuff. So I would prefer the residential.
Matt?
David.
David?
A couple of things. I agree with that. There is great benefit in going to something interstate. So newbies in particular, and I think those have been returned. It's just good every now and again to go to another world and see how they do it. And as you travel the world after being in local government for a while, you'll start looking at footpaths and curbs and gutters and outdoor dining and all sorts of stuff. If you're not doing it already, as it creeps upon you, understand it's not a disease. It's just an interest to develop. But it's great to go into a conference where there's a lot of people who are in our family of local government who understand what we do, and you get presentations on the stuff that we do that no one else understands. Okay? You won't get that by coming away just with us. You'll hear about us, you'll hear about our needs, you get stimulated by the things that we and the staff have thought about. So I think there does need to be balance, and I think we need to work out some way of getting you guys somewhere in the next year or two. Somewhere that can stimulate your thinking on a broader level. I think in this instance, I think we should be getting ourselves together. 4 years will come and go before you know it. You'll have a whole heap of stuff that you want to do. I think all of us have been returned. We haven't written a list, we should, about what we want to do. And we know that if we don't get our act together in the first year, it's really hard to make those things come true in the last year. You're really struggling. So the sooner we get our act together about what we all want to do and not do, the better, so that the staff can get on with making it happen. Because not all of it will be cheap and happen in 1 year. That's the other reason. Having said that, so I'm in favour of the seminar. Two other things. There is a residential run by the LGA on the 19th and 20th of February, I think, which I encourage new members to get to. If you can spare the time, you'll meet people from across the state, and you'll hear presentations from people about the South Australian local government sector, and that will be very, very valuable for you. So if you can do that, get to it. And that won't
send out some information on that.
Yep. And that won't at all be a double up on what the staff will do for us in the proposed March thing. It'll be about the sector as a whole, not about Prospect. And there's lots of stuff that we do. We have a very, very broad reach of topics, and some of them are very specialised. The more you can get around the laws and the regulations around what we do, the better, the more useful you'll be. And finally, March is a really, really busy month. And 14th and 15th, I'm sure I could make free, but I just wonder as we get closer to it that it might be pretty tricky. We've got our fair, which is only one day, but it's just a busy month. I'd probably prefer it wasn't.
Yes.
The 20th now, the fair is a week after, yeah.
Yeah, I agree with, sorry, just I'm going to pat my say. The residential stuff's really good, but the residential stuff, like the Melbourne stuff was really good, the Perth stuff was really good, but it was still like, that's what I still consider the residential stuff, where we are together exploring the specific needs of our council.
But with the LGMA conference, before we did the Perth, like in Perth, before we did the tour of Perth medium density. Yeah, the conference wasn't as good as some others, so I was a bit disappointed. But in Melbourne, we just went to Melbourne just to look at medium density and came back and did some workshopping over there.
Yeah, had a look at various council, specific councils over there.
Yeah.
So it was a planned sort of.
Yeah. I don't see the need. Well, I can't rule it out, but that was specifically around our rezoning.
Yeah.
I'm not sure we've got a need like that identified now. I was thinking more interstate to go to a conference. That's probably where I was thinking.
I don't remember going to a
Was that bad? Okay.
Right, Councillor Harris?
I did.
We went and looked at the
Yeah, that's what I remember.
Yeah.
First of all, March is a bit hard, I suppose, because there's lots of things that happen in March. No more would I go to the races and that, because it'll be going as Mark Group's partner and I'll get hung for that. But it's just a bit awkward. But
it wasn't my plan.
I've been to the Melbourne one, and this is mainly, the newer people are supposed to be. The Melbourne one, we went basically looking about tall buildings and tourism, the street sort of front and that. So it was a bit awkward if people had different ideas that it fitted in. And somehow I ended up with Bruce as a partner, didn't help much.
Well, you complained about Mark, that's all
I know, that was all right, didn't mind that. So the other thing we did have at one stage, and I think what you might have been talking about is when we went up to the Novotel thing. That sort of fitted in, and some things are okay. But I've been told here by other people that sit around me and staff and that, and it's not my personal view, but it's an okay view, not a bad view. Some people see their life in the council and doing things and going ahead, and when we have people left the staff here and go and work, they say, well, local government's their life and that's a good thing, and I think it's a good thing, I don't think it's a bad thing as a part. So particularly the newer people, I think it's very important with that sort of view to go to the federal one. It's because you do see, I'm amazed, particularly if you say you go looking at people from Queensland. You've got one local government for the whole city type thing, and these people control country roads or so whole lots of different things that we can't do simply because of the size, and the law might let us either. But so I think particularly, and I'd like to still do it, but particularly for newer people, I think it's an important thing in government, where it fits in either the beginning, halfway through, or what. And if you're going to go away and do it, and every single person I went away with, the lady out there puts me down, I went to more than I did. I never went to Perth in my life. Council, never.
I saw you there.
Yeah, I bet people saw me there, but I just never got on a plane and went to Perth. But the other things, and I found it was amazing to learn. And for younger people coming on in particular, I think it's really worth it. So I'd hate to say no to it. I think it's a very important thing to learn. And also for our staff to go to those things to learn it.
Just to clarify before, my intention was to have this session this year but then continue with the conference attendance.
Oh yeah, the
So-
conference next year is most probably in Adelaide.
I don't know.
I've got caught with that. This year going next. No, just on that though, would there be enough capacity in this year's budget to do something for us and also send 2 people to a national conference?
Yeah, I think there is, particularly the ALGA conference, which I think would be really valuable. And for those of you who don't know, the Australian Local Government Association has a conference in Canberra. I don't know what month that is, June, and that is really worthwhile going to, I think. So we could do that for sure.
Training in my bag. So for those who don't know, I work as a trainer at Complicates. So just on costings of training, it'd be nice to know how much the training costs. I don't know if we have access to that information.
How much
the training? I think from memory, elected members' training budget was about 32,000.
The itemised. So what we're paying.
Depends what you're doing. LGA courses are quite cheap, quite
Reasonable, modest, yeah.
sorry,
Affordable.
The thing we have to be really clear when we're talking about training is the distinction between information sessions and training.
training and development all falls under the same budget.
But from a learning outcomes point of view, it has very different outcomes. So I think you have to be really clear when you're engaging trainers what the objectives are, what the desired outcomes are, and generally as a trainer you give feedback. So for example, we should be given the opportunity to give feedback on did you understand what the trainer said? What did you learn from that session? So I think that's really important when you're getting thrown a lot of information at you. So that's just a point on training. I think there's also an opportunity with a lot of the interstate sessions. Certainly I'd be really interested in attending some of the conferences. But a lot of conferences are now available via webinar. So I'd like to see the ALGA or LGA actually have webinars available.
No.
Oh.
Some of the law firms. So is it because of the confidential nature of it, or is it just?
Baby steps.
They haven't got.
No. I'm just saying for the national conferences, it would make sense if people can't attend. Because I attend a lot of webinars online and just listen in, or it's taped and then you watch it later. So it's just to flag. It doesn't necessarily have to be ALGA, but I gave a talk to a conference with AIBS, which is the Australian Institute of Building Surveyors, SA chapter, this was last year, and it was crystal ball gazing, so it was the future of the housing industry. And that was really interesting because we had lots of professionals and councils attended that session. So I guess I'm just saying that, yes, I'd like to be involved. In what capacity is up to the council. But I think in going to the conference, I think as a new member, sometimes it's good not to be too guided by the existing ideas already in prospect. You know what I mean? Because you're all, but you've got a corporate brand prospect, which is great, and you've built it. But I think sometimes just fresh eyes, keep our eyes fresh, we might actually find some ideas to bring to the table instead of through your eyes. Yeah. Yep. Good. Thank you.
I agree with all what's been said. It's to suit different purposes and for different people's needs, wants, and all that sort of type of stuff. So I've already had a look at the one up in Darwin, and I had a look at the program, and apart from perhaps one sort of workshop, seminar or something like that, I wasn't too grabbed. But that's because it may be that some of the new people there are really that would suit a lot of their needs quite well. Being coming in new into local government. So I would recommend. I think Kerry, you send out, don't you, anything that's to do with that's coming up on
LGA.
Yep. Anything to do with LGA comes out
once a week. Yeah.
On the LGA website and have a look at the specific education sector. I've just written that down. Send a link out. Because they do come up with very good specific topics, keeping in mind that we have to do some mandatory stuff, don't we? So yeah, as well. And the other thing was, whenever I go to any of them, I always try and find something useful and something new, you know, so to have that focus when I go, or, you know, to, with networking, you know,
Yep.
to try and make some contact and talk with people and stuff like that. So it's not just a, you know, a sort of good food fest or something, you know.
So you're in favour of the...
So I think that particularly with new, number of new elected members, it's half our elected member contingent. So I think perhaps this time, you know, it may be a different sort of focus, perhaps, whatever. So
With a hike. The hike.
no, not the one at the Novotel. I'm not doing that again.
That was just to get to your room.
It took me an hour to recover, but I'm a bit fitter now. But yeah, so I just think it's sort of, especially, you know, you elected members, if you've got a particular interest or you recognise that there's an area that you need more information about, just to, you know, put in the request and it'll sort of get, you know, get sorted out there. So I'm not, you know, this particular year. I do think that it would be good for us to have some form of, like the team building. We're already, I think, sort of, I get the sense there's a high energy in the team, you know, and we've sort of had, what, 3 meetings under our belt already. Yeah, so I think that anything, some topics. I mean, there are Main Street conferences as well. I would like to have gone to some of those.
Well, they have one in South Australia every year.
Yeah. And so that's an area, I think, if we could be making a list of some of these things, you know, just highlight to some people that may not be aware. There's some of the place-making stuff. I get, I'm on an email, you know, that gets sent nearly every week about placemaking in Australia and internationally, and they have some fantastic things there, you know. I'm interested, you know, like in some that are about the vertical gardens, greening some of our sort of buildings and things like that. So I think we went round, you know, talking now. So I'm just in favour, I think, at this stage of whatever.
For residential, yeah. And is March the appropriate time? I think I didn't quite ask. Yep, okay. All right. Thank you, Mark.
Actually, I've been to both. I thought Perth was very underwhelming in terms of the actual conference. I think the stuff we did outside of the conference was way better. But that's my experience with it. I'm happy with residential. I think it'd be really good if we do a residential, wherever it is, whether it's Barossa, South, or East, wherever, that we actually do try and tie it into something that's happening locally that we're interested in. So if it's a council that's doing innovative river night on roads or something, we put that. It's about public art, just take the opportunity. It's an opportunity more than picking out a specific thing. There could be something in state we could do as a group and tie both those together as well. I don't know if there's anything that's specific. I didn't do the Melbourne trip, so I don't have that list, but some support of that. In terms of the policy we've got around is that a formal policy, or is that a
Policy position of council, yes.
Because I'd be interested, and others may not be, I'd be interested in kind of looking at removing the restrictions on that, because I think each year, well, the Perth was in 2012,
Before that.
Well, no,
11, sorry, 11 or 12. Yeah,
11, 12.
Sorry, yeah.
So every year we should have this conversation. I'd just like to say, you know, each year the council determines how to use its training.
Yeah, I agree. We can bring that back.
It will be in February. Yeah, it will be for review.
And the other comment I make, it's just, I think it's incumbent on all of us to seek our own opportunities as well. So I guess my thinking is you look for your own opportunities, and you know, some of those you might choose paper yourself as opposed to going to council. I mean, there's opportunities both ways. So
Thank you. Yep. Next.
I'm a fan of starting more broadly and getting some wider context and then bringing that back to a local context. So I'd be in favour of people attending on a national level and bringing that back to the council. And when we think about what might be interesting from the perspective of a study trip or whatever it might be, then in my mind I'd be looking for something along the lines of looking at cities around Australia who are ahead of the curve from where we are, 5 years ahead, 10 years ahead, whatever it might be, and making sure that we're looking at best practice and what's aspirational for us as a city. So I don't know who that is or what that means, but just for that.
Yeah. And is March or the appropriate time for the residential?
Yeah.
All right.
March is okay.
Yep.
I think it's a very busy month, so if there is an opportunity to do anything different, great. But otherwise, March can be fine.
Yep.
I'm very cautious when we talk about elected member training, but we give our ratepayers value for money. We are here for a very short time. We're here for 4 years. It's a good time and a short time, and I'm cautious that if we don't really start to understand as an elected member body now what our vision is for 4 years' time, we may start to lose track of it and try and find ourselves 6 months away from another election, wondering exactly are we still on track. So I'm in favour at the moment of having a residential conference as is proposed. Noting it would be great as well to send a few people perhaps to this national conference and to explore future training opportunities, but just noting the time constraints and value for money, I think us working out as an elected member body ourselves what our priorities are going to be for the next 4 years and how we're going to realise that to be very important.
Thank you.
I think there's a great value in a collective experience. So if you go over to somewhere else, you go over to another region in Australia, but if you do it as a group, you get a collective experience and everyone can remember exactly what they saw. And I think the learning is compounded. If one person goes over there or 2 people go over there, a lot of it gets forgotten, but a little bit, if you have a collective group, a lot of it gets, little bits are picked up by different people. And it'll be a different experience for everyone, and then that becomes a very valuable collective experience. I do agree that maybe we should send, I personally would have an interest in going to the LG. It would be outside of my scope of what I would find valuable, I guess, but there would be other members here, the elected members who would be actually, perfect to send and would love to go. I think there should be some sort of residential training, some sort of, and I think it needs to be outside of our area. I think we need to go away. I can remember many years ago the Radio Marketing Bureau, when I was in advertising, every year Radio Marketing Bureau would do a radio writers workshop, and their criteria was that it had to be in a wine region. And I think that's quite clever. But I certainly believe, and the other thing too is that if you do something as a collected group, there's a team bonding element to it, which I think you can do things piecemeal and you can go and do webinars and things like that, but I think if you take a group of people out of all the pressures of the world for 2 days and they can focus on stuff, and I think you get much more traction and much more value for that time than you would if you to break all those hours up into separate hours.
Yep.
Let me just make a comment on that. I know I've already spoken. I can say one thing you're wrong because you haven't experienced it. When I went away, prior to going away any of the first times, I thought I knew everything. I was born knowing everything. One of the most major things I found was the Murray-Darling Association. What's that got to do with us? The river's so far away, we're here. But through that, I took over from Tim Newell, but I found that a fascinating part of my life to be involved in that actually helps the water, helps here, that fits into our council. So where I said you were wrong, you say, oh, well, it wouldn't interest me, because I'm not in that.
Oh, okay.
It's a good possibility going and discovering these new things with other people, and you definitely said, a broader thing. Oh, never thought of that about the city of Prospect. Wouldn't it be fantastic to have a creek or a fountain or something, or bubbling water in the city of Prospect somewhere? We got none of our wards. Oh, you've got a river in yours and a creek. Sorry, but apart from your good ward, it's a new thing you see.
Having not seen the agenda of it, I was just making a general comment. It's probably people with more experience and probably more able to get a benefit out of going there if we were only sending a couple of people.
It's another world outside Hornsby.
We did vote against that.
Yeah, Dave, look, on that, they're desperately wanting us to get back on board. So if you've got an interest, you should let Mark know, and they would just love someone from here to turn up. We're like one of the few councils on the plains that aren't members, right? And I'm the president. It's kind of like. Now, a couple of things. There are alternatives that we should also consider. There's tons of committees across the sector that pop up from time to time that are quite specialised areas. If you've got a particular interest, get involved. You'll get something out of it and you'll give something back to the sector. They come up in the weekly circulars, okay? So that's where you're going to find them. And the way to tap in is to obviously open up the link and have a look, see if it interests you. Get hold of Kerry or Mark or somebody.
So the first point of call.
Is this the representatives on outside bodies?
Yes.
And I've been sending a few through.
Yeah.
There's a template on every one of those circulars telling you what to fill in. Just fill it in, send it in. We'll put that onto the council report.
So get in touch with Kerry. Those of us who've been around longer should be thinking about giving back because we're deemed to now be, old timers, old wise people in the sector, and the sector needs people like that. Okay. The training and development stuff, it would be nice, Mark, if you could take on board some of the comments and have a bit more of a sophisticated approach to our policy. The interstate stuff, national conferences, I think, should stay on the agenda in terms of what we should do. There's no doubt in my mind that the exposure to what other councils do and committee work has made me a better local government person, and therefore the community better off because of it. I guarantee you'll do the same for all of us. If you see, make you think more broadly, and you can zero in on how that solution can apply. Perhaps not specifically from that thing you heard, but it'll just make you think more broadly. But equally, we could do some other things. I like the suggestion from Matt. I think that, if we found a city that we really wanted to be like, let's go and visit it. To an extent, that was a Perth-Melbourne experience, and it was quite valuable. And like you're standing in front of a building, having a yak about what you like or don't like about it. It's actually really simple, but it's quite empowering and it informs your policy. I don't know if we'd find a city, but one thing we haven't done that we could do, it might sound a bit naff, we could actually have a surfing session. Yeah. Maybe in this thing you're thinking about, but we set aside an hour and a half to set up a projector, have a really good connection and surf the net. And one place we could start is the other 20 smart cities in the world. Because I've gone and had a look at those. We're a top 21 smart city. If you Google that and you look at some of the other cities and start opening up their home pages, it's really, really interesting. And you just from that experience, you can actually get an insight into what that city might be that we want to be like. And it's easy. We could do it all together. We don't want to do it too long, just go kind of square-eyed. But we could do some stuff that's developmental where we don't actually have to leave the room. And it's not about the law or conflict of interest.
I thought you meant real surfing. I thought that's a great idea.
That was getting excited too. Our attention. No, surfing up.
I think that's a great idea, and maybe without sounding too burdensome, if we took that idea on board, we could form small groups beforehand, choose a couple of areas of interest and do some prep. Yep. Maybe you'll present 4 or 5 contexts and sort of tell us an idea.
That's a good idea.
But then also, with that as some preparatory work, then take that broad view so we're not just narrowed down on what a couple of people think. Sorry. We can even, with technology these days, we could even get some people to Skype in from somewhere around the world.
If we get good at it, if we set aside a workshop at the hub specifically around that, got a great connection, big screen, comfy chairs, kitchen seats, fridge.
Good.
Walking distance.
Well, thank you all. I really like the idea of elected member doing a presentation.
I volunteered to do one looking at the wine.
Yeah. All right, that wraps up this particular topic. Mark, have you got anything else?
Just the obvious, the support was there for our residential, quite innovative, so we'll do a bit of work on that. We'll try to aim for the 14th and 15th. We'll send out a calendar appointment to see if we can lock that in. And so basically we're going to come back with a list of the conferences that are available through the LGA. We'll revisit the training policy of Council. and make that more flexible. We'll send out the Australian Local Government Association information once we receive that for the mid-year conference, to see if any of you, maybe 2 or 3, might want to go along to that.
I'll be going to it, I think.
That's your LGA.
We can't choose every day.
every year.
In Canberra, there's always a board meeting, and I'll be immediate past president. We only have 2 reps, and I'll still be one of them. So I'll be there. The reason it's in Canberra is not because we love the scenery. It's because we go in a sitting week, and half the people who go are up on the hill lobbying during different sessions of the appointments they're about to make. And so will I be with the LGA delegations. But there might be something that we want that we can lobby for. So you'll see people coming and going in taxis all day long. It works out really well.
And the Murray-Darling stuff, we're currently not members, I don't believe, so we need to have a budget discussion.
Not even members.
We need to have a budget discussion and a report to council.
$1,000.
Do we just go with it? Yeah.
Alan, just so you understand, we need to have a budget discussion and a report to council, so we'll follow that up.
About your farmers market money.
Okay, thank you. Yep. So we'll close the meeting, and Greg will chair.
What about other business?
There's no other business in the agenda.
Anything that you want to raise with any directors, just come and see us straight away. Unless there's any general items. I know, David, you've got one for me.
I told you about this afternoon. No, the business is just, anyway, the Amy Gillett Foundation, you might have heard of, the cyclist who got squashed. Her mother formed a foundation, and the Amy Gillett Ride on the Southern Expressway is the biggest exhibition of it in South Australia. You might have heard of the 1 Metre Matters campaign across Australia, and this is about a metre gap when people drive past cyclists. Pretty straightforward, nice graphic. What I didn't understand was that this has huge traction in the eastern states, and you might have heard recently that the Queensland government's passed a law that you have to provide a metre gap. And I thought, well, that's pretty brave. And so what happened after that is I thought, I wonder how that goes. I got a call from Amy Gillett's mother the other day. She wanted to catch up with me. Thought, what the hell was that about? Saw her this afternoon. She said, Queensland have passed that rule because of the Amy Gillett Foundation's work with the road transport authorities and their equivalent, the RAA and the Cycling Federation, yada, yada, yada. It's a 2-year trial. At the same time they brought it in, they put reciprocal obligations on cyclists and up the fines for running red lights and all sorts of other stuff. Because their second campaign is this 2-way street thing. This is really nice. This has got obligations for, or suggestions for cyclists on one side and for drivers on the other side. Kind of nice. So this is saying everybody's got obligations. Why is that of interest? Because she said in Queensland they've managed to be so successful they've passed a law and they have huge information campaign about it, and it is astonishingly successful already. New South Wales, they also have a statewide presence and policy settings and an advertising campaign around the same stuff. Victoria, more so. Bus shelter ads, billboards, backs of buses, sides of buses, all sorts of stuff. She said, in South Australia, where I'm from, and where Amy was born, we have bugger all. I can't get a council to get on board and even demonstrate this stuff. She said, I'm looking for the first council to do it. I thought, right, that sounds interesting. Given that we've spent a lot of effort on cycle lanes on Prospect Road at reasonable pain, Churchill Road's got one, we've got the bike path now on the train line, Regency Road's got a bike path, and we've got our routes through the, we've got in the budget to increase the signage for our off-main road routes, and we're doing the bicycle boulevard on Braun Road. I thought, crikey, we've probably got more cycle stuff per head than most. And I just wondered how much interest there'd be in Mark bringing a report to us that talked about what does this mean, what does this mean to us. But if there's enough interest, we'll go through the motions. But I thought it was a really good opportunity for us to get on board.
Yeah. I thought the thing we've got our terrific thing, all that, it's just spot on and can install.
Well, there's all sorts of ways to do it, but her suggestion is that you would end up putting up some signage, like this, as well as promoting it locally, and that we would pay for our signs that we needed, but all the graphics and the campaign backup, everything is provided by free from the Amy Gillett Foundation. So you don't need to do any of the intel, you just need to do the action. Well, that's pretty straightforward.
So if that's okay, but we get a bit of staff time spent on putting together what the hell that would mean, and as I presume, under you, Greg, we could do that?
So basically it's signage. That will be.
Promotion.
Signage and education.
Signage as in posters, laminated posters?
There's all sorts of stuff you can give out, and I think there's a school education program that she will volunteer to run things at school. There's bumper stickers.
Are they
Yeah.
having a stall at our terrific
Say again?
Are they having a stall at our
I don't think so, but I'm happy on with
That's what I just said, get it.
Well, I won't tell her anything because I think I'll flick it to Mark to try and or Greg to work through what we can and can't do, and a stall's a great idea.
We had a meter each side of the bikes on Prospect Road. We'd only get one row of cars.
Well, it is a narrow street. It's the main way. Narrow street, yellow line.
overhead?
The bike lane is 1.5 feet. That's the house we had. We did
All right. I declare the meeting closed.
Well done.
Nick will be our next chair.